And we're live. I think we're live.
Yeah.
Yes, we're live with part 2.
Hello.
Hello. We're live
Hello.
with hobbies and interests.
Okay. So
You have the floor.
I have the floor. Oh my God. Okay. Should we start from childhood again, or present day hobbies or interests?
What if we start from childhood, work through?
Okay. So like I said in the first, with the first question, I have been an avid reader ever since I was 5 years old. So I think reading and books have been one of my top hobby or top interests all my life. I have to say though that now, when I've been in the university for so many years, that it has sort of eaten my interest to read any books. So my interests have, in recent years, maybe like past 5 years or something, have become more like virtual. That I spend more time with my computer than I spend with my books nowadays, I think. But yeah.
In terms of how you read books,
Mm.
and let's see how similar you are to me in this perspective. Do you have a problem focusing on one book at a time?
Yes. It's been a joke that I used to have, and I still have, a huge, how do you call it? A huge amount of books at my night table that I'm reading at the same time, and I've never finished them. Most books that I have in my bookshelf, I haven't read all of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a pretty good idea what function that is, but I won't spoil it for the viewers.
Yeah, I have an idea.
And again, if they don't know, they should go back to typology school.
Yeah. Yes. But that's very typical for me.
Yeah, I'll just put that back in there. The reading plan that I don't actually stick to.
Yeah. I have several reading journals that I have started, and then I have stopped filling them. And I have several, yeah.
Sorry, what is a reading journal?
Well, there are some there are some reading journals that have a ready format, that they have some areas or themes or questions that you answer about the book. But then there are, of course, some people just write whatever they want about the book. But the thing is, it's sort of like one-person book club in a way, that you write and reflect on the book that you read.
So, I won't say whether you're an introvert or not, but do you feel that it's an example of the JP questions, judging, perceiving questions, being a little bit tricky in that you might plan to do something, but actually do it?
Yeah, well, I think the JP difference has been difficult for me to see which one I am. Yeah, all these years that I've been into typology.
So, in general, do you think that the JP questions work better for extroverts?
Yeah, definitely. In the extroverts in my life, like in my friends and family and whatever, they are much easier. Although I have some introverts that are very clear with their preference also. I don't know why, but they are very clear with the JP preference, but I'm not one of them. I'm not one of those.
Right, so that we don't forget, we'll go for the thing that the audience is mainly interested in. If we ask you, how did you get into typology?
I think it started in some way already when I was a child. I remember one occasion when I have a little brother. He's 10 years younger than me, and when he was born, he had this baby book, the book where parents write things about the baby. And there was this one part about horoscopes. There were very short descriptions of like a few words about every sun sign. And I was really captured by that part. There's something really interesting. And I remember I read it many times then, and I always thought I knew what I was, but I was thinking, I'm not like that, I'm more like that. And I think I did that intuitively already then. And then later, I think it started. That was the biggest reason why I started with astrology. So when I grew a bit older, so in my teenage years, I was very deep into astrology. That was my special interest when I was a teenager, and it was not. And remember, that was time before internet. So I was, all the information I had was from library books and stuff like that. There was no internet. So, and my mother had this Jungian period, but at that time she was in her early 40s, and she went through this. She read Jungian psychology and about archetypes and this individuation crisis and whatever. And I remember I read a bit of some Jung then, not about these psychological types, but more about this other psychology of Jung, and this unconscious and whatever. And I got really interested in psychology. But then my main typology system was astrology. And I realized already then that, okay, this cannot be, there's something wrong with this, because this cannot, one's type cannot be based on star signs or whatever. But I was still fascinated about the system. And then I got into, after astrology, I got into these, what are they? These old four temperaments.
The ancient temperament.
Yeah, phlegmatic, sanguine, whatever. And then I got into them, and I used that typology. Because you have to remember, because in Finnish there were not books about MBTI. MBTI is not right. A thing in Finland, or this Jungian, and socionics is not a thing in Finland. So there were no.
When you got into the temperaments, did you get into the Kersey temperament theory?
No, the Kersian. Yeah, it was not. It was only these old. Who was that? Hippocrates? No. Who was
it's a little bit of David Kersey. It's either Galen or Hippocrates, and then even some say Plato.
Yeah.
With that, this might bring two subjects together. This question, well, your study of the archetypes. Now in all this comparative study of religion that you've done, are you fascinated by archetypal themes within religion?
Yes, at some amount. Thing is, though, that in comparative religion, like Jung is past. He's not anyone to take seriously. At this point, he's an interesting historical figure, but his theories or anything, you cannot use his theories in the academic world in Finland. It's not a thing. So I kind of learned that Jung was, he's part of the history of the field, but he's not a prominent figure anymore. So,
what are your personal thoughts on that? Do you think there's validity in Jung's work in that field?
When I learned this around 10 years ago, or 10 or maybe almost 15 years ago, I'm very old. Then I thought, okay, I accepted it. I was still interested in these typologies, but I adapted the idea that these are not scientific, and I still think that these are not scientific in a way that scientific psychology or academic psychology works. I have changed. Let's put it this way. I have an open and curious mind, so I'm very fascinated about Nardi's work and the socionic work also, and any work and temperament studies. We have some pretty prominent temperament psychologists here in Finland. So I read those. So I knew about Big Five and that kind of theories already before I knew about any of these Jungian typologies. So Big Five is a bit more familiar to me, or these early attachment theories and stuff like that. So I used it.
A lot of the audience, including me, are not familiar with the Big Five. What do you think the pros and cons of it are?
What do you mean? Sorry, I didn't understand.
A lot of the audience, including me, are not familiar with the Big Five. What do you think the strengths and weaknesses are of that particular system?
There has been, I have to say, because I'm not a psychologist, so I don't completely understand all the terms and concepts they use with regard to this validity and stuff like that. But what I have understood, I have listened to some of Nardi's criticism and some other criticism by MBTI people. So I understand that there are some problems that it doesn't, so the Big Five doesn't sort of explain anything. So that's, it lacks, I don't know what, because I'm not a psychologist, but I understand that it's not explaining anything, so it's sort of just, I don't know, describing,
right.
Yeah.
I can direct the viewers to a video that Dario did with NF Geeks, where he talked about his criticisms of the Big Five.
Yeah, I remember that video also, and I have read about criticism of Big Five, but I would not be that harsh, because I think there's a lot of overlap in Big Five and MBTI.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There are some sites, like one of my favorite typology sites nowadays is the 16 personalities, and there, I don't know if you are familiar with this site.
Is that the Socionics site?
No, it's not Socionics. It's a British or English company. They have now created another spin-off from that site also. It's 16 personalities. So their theory is based on MBTI, but it's a mix of MBTI and Big Five. It's not function-based. But they give the code like ENFP turbulent or ENFP assertive. So they add this fifth element that from Big Five. So they sort of combine Big Five. That's my how I have understood their theory. So I like their sites, and their test is one of the best ones to test, like to give some kind of idea where a person falls under. It's not. Well, it's not. There is no test that it would be perfect, but it gives some direction. And I usually can guess. I have guessed correctly most people who I have forced to take the test. I have known what they will come out of it, even though it doesn't again explain anything, but it will tell something about their preferences.
Yeah. So, have you read any of David Kersey's books?
Yeah, I have both. Please understand me, the first one and the second one. But I haven't I haven't read them from the beginning to the end. I have read them, parts from there and there.
And you've, I think you've read all of Neuroscience of Personality. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Well, that shows you how good a book it is, folks. She's read all of it. And it had temperament in there. Do you think it's essentially the same? The way Dario and Linda, because he's got a lot of input from Linda Behrens, and she was a student of David Kersey's.
Yeah, the temperament part is very similar, I think. I did have some trouble understanding why Dario or Nardi wanted to have this I'm quite curious actually why he wanted to have this temperament and this function. I like that there are both of them, but I'm not sure that it's working. I don't know. That's a bit problematic. Maybe.
Well, he's been working with Linda Behrens for 20 years, and he actually does have a deep functional justification for the temperaments that it will release in future. He sent me in a message of months and months ago, right? He's asked me not to release it yet, but he has a good theoretical basis for the temperaments.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
And so when do you think that just in your real life, do these Kersey Behrens temperaments just stand out, and you go, wow, I see a lot of real life evidence for these temperaments?
Well, for some people, yes.
Yes.
It depends. Yeah, it depends. I have some people in my life that don't fit them very easily. So, and I have to say here that I also have a period in my typology career, or history, not career, but in my typology history, I was very much involved with this one Jungian-based system, this cognitive type. I'm not sure if you know that. They have nothing, I don't think they have still released anything, but it was based on visual reading, and I also was typed by them. But it was interesting. Their theory was interesting because they combined Nardi's work with this Jungian typology. It was a little bit similar to socionics, but not as much as that it would, overlap well. But the big thing was that they used quadras as well, and they were,
They might be hearing from Dario's lawyer if they're combining his work.
But I think that Dario might know that they have used. I don't know, but anyway, but they used his work a lot, and their theory was that what Dario sees in like what is inside our head, that their theory was that we also leak those functions, or that our brain and those functions leak out. So, in our facial movements and our body language and our how we are, so it's sort of, and I think it's not completely, it's not like impossible. I think it has some sense, but what is of course problematic is how we can make sure that a certain thing is defining a certain. So what we would need is that, what I would like to see is that when I'm having this EEG thing on my head, how my facial movements and stuff, how they show up in the EEG.
Right. I'll just I've this book. I don't know if you've got this book. Why Him, Why Her by Helen Fisher.
I have read. I have read it.
Excellent. What do you think of it when it's talking about the hormones?
I really like that book, and when I read it, I was very like, oh my god, is this some kind of like same like this blood type diet thing? And I read a lot about Helen Fisher, like how. Can you see me? I can't see you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I just said it. Okay. Yeah.
I'll just I'll briefly click on my square, so if you talk, the audience can still see this.
Okay, yeah.
Now,
yes.
I think she does have it. She tries to have it both ways because she does group people, so she effectively treats them as types. And the only reason why she's not calling them that is that the scientific convention is to use scales.
Yes.
Rather than types, but she still groups them like that in the book.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly. But I have to say that I thought about these divisions, and this is the general. I would do it like this, but I have to say that I think some types are not. For example, ENFPs can be dopamine types, I think, or.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that it's not completely, and LSIs can be guardians or rationals, I think, especially rationals. So I think any thinking lead can be rational. So it's not one, or I think it's a bit more fluid, the system. But this is the general. I would do it like this.
Yeah, and
Helen Fisher is great. I like her work.
Right, I'll read more. And you've read all of the book?
I have read a Finnish translation, and I'm not sure that it's this. I think it's this book that you showed, but I cannot be totally sure.
Right, so Hannah's recommendation would be, I've read all the book, so that means it's good.
Yeah. Is that the book where she says that Darwin is idealist or estrogen type?
I only got it a couple of days ago.
Okay. So it's not me. Okay, it's you who hasn't read it.
But yeah, let's have a brief chat about the temperaments. This is you've seen the Model G things that I've sent.
Yeah,
this
but
is
I don't.
like,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand that much about them, but yeah.
Right. But it's like, so this is like the first V square. So this would be for, say, ESFP, and these are their goals. And it basically, it takes the extroverted sensing and it makes it more sophisticated, because the main version of socionics sees extroverted sensing in a way that only really applies to the ESTP, where they make it all about power.
Yeah.
Whereas, at least now Victor, with his SE plus and SE minus, he has like a positive version of SE, which is more like the ESFP in terms of it's about resisting being controlled. So that's about freedom, whereas the SE minus is more about power. But David Kersey, I mean, as you know, because he worked so long, over 20 years, with troubled and troublesome teenage boys, schoolboys, as he put it. So, and he was in the U.S. Marine.
Yeah.
He was a fighter pilot in the U.S. Marine Corps in World War II, surrounded by artisans. His parents were artisans. He had a brother that liked to go out fighting. That was his aim, to go out at night and pick a fight with someone. So he really understood artisans. And so all of these particular things about the artisan temperament. And this idea here is that MBTI would say, and classical socionics would say, that the ESFP is SEFI. But when we look at their behavior, and this is all of the behavior from, please understand me too, these are all the things in the profile. And now I ask you, Hannah, which function do most of these sound like?
Yeah, FE. No.
FE.
Yeah.
So it shows you just how much the ESFP uses FE. And so Victor's system would say they are SEFE, where the FE shows in terms of its actions and its behavior as a way to achieve their goal. So for instance, with Jeff, his goal is attention, and he will use these things in order to get attention. But if you explained like the FE values to him, well, he already knows them, but he would say, oh no, I'm not that, because it's not these usual values of like sticking to what is socially accepted and all of the things that we usually associate with FE. Is just like using it, and they don't even really know they're using it. So it's like I call it the fish that doesn't know it's wet function, where you don't, like with me, I never understood NI, because any explanation of NI that said like you have intuition of time where you can see the consequences of actions, I would think, wait a minute, that's logic. I don't see how that's different from TI, because I can't see it, because it's so bound up with my lead function. And maybe with you, oh no, I can't say with you, because that would indicate the type that I think you are.
Yeah.
That's secret. So yeah, so I think the systems are compatible, especially with this particular profile. So when you read the artisan temperament in Please Understand Me Too, and do you think that's good? I mean, in like, do you think it's accurate?
Well, depends on to whom I'm comparing it, of course, but maybe, yeah, it can be to some SP types that I know, but not to all.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
So
my mother. Yeah, my mother is ISFP in MBTI, and she doesn't fit the stereotype SP.
Right. Although Kersey would have the ISFP as the kindest of all the types.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. He would. You mean Kersey would say that ISFP?
Oh yeah, that's what he wrote that explicitly. That the ISFP is the kindest of all the types, and in Victor's system, they are FI-SI. So it shows the importance of their SI.
Yeah, that's the funny. Yeah, my mother fits the ISFP description, but not the SP description. Yeah, that's exactly like that. And,
yeah, and in
yeah.
it's as long as people know what to look for when they read the because also Kersey's profiles, they don't really talk about the temperament within the profiles much because he's like covered it in so much depth in dedicated chapters that it's almost as if the ISFP where they it's if you push them past a certain point, then their values will come to the fore.
Yeah.
Like there's a moral line with them, and also what else? And their SP traits. What I gain from the profile is they have the SP urges, but they see them almost as like a devil within them, and they don't really want to act on it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like, and of course the much more the subdued, and that are hardest to understand. And there is some bias in socionics against the ISFP, the FISE, because of the fact that of the influence of ENTPs that don't get on well with ISFPs. And so in the socionics profiles, you'll find the odd line that will just talk about all ISFPs being judgmental.
Yeah.
It's like it's like you're on Wikipedia and someone's inserted a rogue line. I'm like, how did that get in?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
so that's right. So we don't want to get too much in the weeds in that area. So
but it's interesting. So
yeah. So like me, do you like seeing the different systems as a different angle on the truth?
Yeah. I think we have talked about this before. Yes. I think I wrote somewhere that I'm an omnivore with typology systems. So yeah, I use them very liberally, or liberally. I think one reason is that, like I said, I don't still see them as scientifically valid and it doesn't matter. I see they are instruments to me mainly. Besides, of course, I'm just interested in them. I love theories and I love speculating about human nature, so that's good. But I also use them in my life. I use them as tools to understand myself and other people. So I don't care if they are true or not. So that helps me to be quite liberal with different typologies. Because, some typologies, for example, I love Enneagram. But Enneagram has it's a different kind of tool. I use it differently than I use MBTI or socionics. So I don't know. I don't understand why they should fight with each other. It doesn't make sense to me. I understand. Yeah, some people are very attached to their typologies. Yeah.
There's a lot of entrenched special interests where I am like there's certain socionics groups that I'm not allowed to post anything in about Model G because they are about Model A or their own system, and no one really complains when I post it in the MBTI groups. But it's like you get all of these turf wars, and there's even a little bit.
I can admit I have had trouble with not only with personality typologies, but also with some other of my interests that are based on some systems that people get too attached to their own. I think that's one reason. Like I said, I'm not religious, so I don't have these affiliations. So I have always felt quite free to explore, and I will continue doing it. I don't care what people in these systems think about that. Yeah.
But you you are, would you say you're a seeker of truth?
Yeah, well, it depends on how we understand truth. I'm not sure we'll ever able to really capture truth, but I'm a seeker of knowledge and information and understanding. So, yeah, that's why I have been studying for all my life. I'm 36, I'm still studying. So, I think
from a philosophical point of view, actually thinking about the nature of truth itself, its limits, and ever we can actually get to it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, you mean my epistemology?
Yeah, which is like why when people complain about when they can say yes, but it's not 100% accurate. I'm going, well, what is? If it's useful for the most part, that is what is important.
Yes, I'm not a I'm a naturalist, and I would say I'm maybe a scientific realist. And if you're a naturalist or scientific realist, you understand that there is no definite truths. There are more or less, better and worse explanations, and the knowledge and information changes all the time. So I think it's a given that it changes.
And of course, you're smart enough to understand our values of statistical significance.
Yeah, I have to say that I don't about socionics. Socionics is unfortunately socionics is my least understood typology because it's my most recent ones. I have only known socionics for like maybe a year, or I'm really new to socionics. So maybe that's good with my typing that I don't know much about socionics.
You'll be ahead of the curve in terms of knowledge about Model G for people who can speak English.
Yeah, that's great.
Right, because this is like Model G Central for English speakers. Yeah. Right, so I'll ask about what do you think of Dario Nardi's research and the book Neuroscience of Personality?
It's my favorite. He's my favorite writer and a favorite researcher. And like I said, I have a very open mind to his. I always, if there's something about where he's involved with, I always try to search those things because like I said, I'm scientifically orientated. I like to have as good information and knowledge as possible. So I'm quite curious if his research will help to establish these types at some or functions or whatever, in some way. So it's not only, even though I'm quite happy if these types never are established in a scientific way, but I don't mind if they are. So yeah, I keep an open mind. I'm really curious about his work.
I think the most important thing is about typology, if it can explain behavior and predict behavior, then it is useful. Then it obviously has some useful to it. If you can know, what this person is going to do this certain thing because you think they're this certain type, then obviously that theoretical framework has some validity in it.
Yeah. But like Dario has said in many places, I would always emphasize that our brains are plastic. We are. This is not our psychology or personality is not a static structure. So there's always room for change. Of course, there are some. I believe there are some temperamental features that are not easily changed, but behavior can be changed even if our these urges or whatever comes from. One, I have to say this because, like I said, I'm interested in scientific theories. The one thing I'm doing right now, I haven't still gotten the results, but I did this 23andMe, this DNA that they are I'm getting my genome in some weeks, and I know that there are some genes that or DNA, how do you call them? These pieces of DNA that can reveal if you are a sort of sensitive person or the so-called orchid child, or there can be some marks that you can maybe be an aggressive person or something like that. And I'm interested in those two.
But the thing is, like, again, it's an elementalism thing where it assumes if you have this, but it's how they interact with all the other ones. And that's one of the things I will say about function theory is that one of the assumptions in socionics, and everyone that uses function theory, is that the elements don't really affect the other elements, or that they are different strengths. So, for instance, you've read Dario's book. Oh yes, there's 3 videos on my channel with Dario in. Have you seen them all yet?
I haven't seen all of them. Like I said, I jumped, so I've seen parts of them.
So there's the interview that's 90 minutes. There's the first one, that's got a lot of other people talking in it, so you might want to scan that one. And then the third one is on introverted intuition, and that's like the best one because it's mostly Dario and Victor interacting with each other. And then the second one is on NE. I don't know whether you'd be interested in now that I'm not saying anything about your type. You might or might not.
Maybe not. Yeah.
But Dario noticed that with the artisans, that I get the impression that they're in their whole neocortex state quite a lot. So it's like that low energy state which is waiting for stimulation from the outside.
Yeah.
So we could say, okay, that function is very strong in artisans. And we'd have to have a look at what it's like in ISFP and ISTP, just how strong that is. Whereas in comparison, if you look at the NPs, the whole brain state, which is associated, the way Dario did his test, it's like when someone is being NE, the behavior that we would associate with someone when, you can say that's intuiting behavior. That behavior is it's very short term because it's a high energy state where, say, this part of the brain switches on and then it stimulates
the Christmas tree.
The Christmas tree. So, that characteristic state isn't as big a factor for NPs as the SE state is for artisans because they're in that state more. So it could be said that the SE state is more determinative of someone's temperament because if they're like that all the while, waiting for outside stimulation, then they're going to be in that mode. Another way to put it would be if an NP was in their brain state as often as an artisan, they would be all. It wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, it's not possible. Or so, how do I know? But I'm guessing. Yeah.
And the same with the NI, where it's like a specialist brain state, and you can generally say that yes, sensing types use intuiting as well, and intuiting. But I think that intuiting types, they're still using sensing most of the time. And it's only in those special circumstances where they're using NE or NI.
Did he write in the book about the frequency of NE, this Christmas tree pattern?
He said it happened when he talked. I don't know if have you seen the video he did, the Google Authors video.
Yeah.
And he talks about.
You mean the one that he gave the talk to?
Yeah. And he actually said it would happen when they gives them a particular task to be creative and to use. So if we say NE is transcontextual thinking, well, transcontextual thinking isn't all the while. Now, certain types might try to make it all the while, like when they're reading, they might like say me when I'm marking something up and going, oh, this bit's like Model G, this bit's like Enneagram. Right, and it's quite tiring. So what it would be is if their perceiving states were as common. And another thing with the Guardians as well, their SI state in terms of their state is more like particular parts of the brain have become very task specific, and the occipital lobe being active. So if intuitives had their particular perceiving state as active as the sensing types, then the temperaments would probably be like SP, SJ, NP, and NJ.
Ah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe there are some places. I could maybe some monasteries, you know, where people are in this NI stage. I could, you know, they are meditating a lot or something like that. So I could imagine those, and maybe NE in some very creative, I don't know, Silicon Valley, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know, you know.
Like when you're writing and you're in the zone because you're blocking out sensing and going totally into your imagination.
Yeah.
And so Carl, as you know, Carl Jung wrote about, because he wrote about all the perceiving functions of the same so like SE suppressing NE. And he actually said that for NE to work, you have to suppress SE. And you can think that a racing car driver, they have to be really in the moment and like suppress NE. And so if you think about it, just a daydreaming state, just blocking out the sensing. So that's covered typology. Oh yes, if you tell us about Enneagram, and also how are we for time?
I don't know. I think it's okay.
Okay. So if you, how much longer can we go?
Maybe I think I'm okay for like 50 minutes. 50 minutes more, I'm okay. I mean, but maybe we change the video at some point.
Oh yes, yes, that's right. Well, I don't know. I mean, the next one's on strengths. You might have a load of strengths. You might want more.
Yeah, I've been going to the gym, so maybe I might have some strength. Yeah.
Okay, so.
But Enneagram, you want to?
Yeah.
You want me to tell my type, Enneagram type?
Well, and your thoughts on it as well. It's up to you whether you want to release your Enneagram or not.
I don't mind it, but I mean, is it useful or is it harmful if I tell it? I think some people might know it already. I like. I can first start. I got into Enneagram before I got into MBTI or any Jungian systems. So I think I first got involved in Enneagram when I was in my early 20s. So more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I wasn't too deep into that because their internet was not that popular back then, and I mainly used books. And they were Finnish books. So the information was not very deep. But I identified as type 1 when I was in my early 20s. But I don't know why. And maybe as a child I can see type 1 tendencies a lot, which is a bit weird. I like this tri-type idea because I identify strongly with 3 types, and they happen to be in different. These.
Yep.
One is head type, one is this gut type, and one is heart type. So nowadays I would say that I'm quite sure of being a type 6 wing 5. So I'm 6 wing 5, and then I have 1 and 4 in my tri-type. So I'm 6, 1, 4. And I'm very likely. I learned about instinctual variance maybe a year or two ago. It was not first. It was not easy to see that. Well, I know I'm SXSP very likely, but it was not that easy to see it.
How does that manifest itself? Your instinctual variance. Let me know if that's too personal a question.
No. I'm just laughing because those who are type 6 SX, they know that it's not an easy type. You know, it's not an easy preference. It's not a preference. It's a curse in a way.
Like a condition.
Yeah, I think because type 6 is maybe one of the most. I would say it's most misunderstood type, but it's also most difficult to capture in short because it's full of contradictions. Because type 6 is more.
it's type 6 is I think Victor associates type 6 with NI.
Really? And I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
That
Okay.
might be because now I go along with Rito and Hudson that associated it with FI, but I think I see why he's associated it with NI because I watched. Did you ever see the Conscious TV Enneagram videos with Ian McNay?
No, I don't think I have.
He talked about he's an Ennea type 6 and he is a businessman, and he said that the reason why it worked out for him is that because as you know, the Ennea type 6 is the worrier, because he would think so much ahead about what could happen.
Yeah.
And so that's what Victor might be seeing as NI, is that the thinking ahead and thinking about contingencies, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the actual motivation to do that is the worry, and which I would say would be more of an FI thing. But it depends.
I think type 6 is hard to connect to any one function or type.
Yeah.
Because I think any type can, any MBTI or Jungian or socionic type can be a type 6. I think it covers. Yeah. It's one of the Enneagram types that covers most, like the widest audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the reason is because Enneagram is not only about our inherited or hardware kind of personality thing. I think environmental stuff affects it a lot. So if you have any traumas or any periods in your life that you have suffered, that will affect, because anxiety and fear are. And I think there's an explanation to this. And also Dario says in his book and in his talks that these cognitive types are about cortex, and his EEGs, it detects the cortex. Yeah. It doesn't detect the deeper layers of the brain. And I think fear especially is an emotion that has to do with our deeper layers, and all other emotions too, but especially fear.
I recommend this book. There's a Dario fan, 8 Keys to Self-Leadership. I think I sent you some scans, but if Dario's listened to this, don't share them. Don't suppress book sales. But it's a very good book. That's his functions book. Yeah. And so, like, it's a very sophisticated. So this is all about SI, about how it can get better, and that's just so people know. My personal thoughts on Enneagram is, generally, I'm somebody who thinks that all the Jungian systems are compatible and that you can translate between them. But however, I feel that any Jungian type can be any Enneagram type, but some combinations are going to be really rare. Yeah,
that's how I think too.
So,
like INFP type 8 is not very common.
But it is possible, though.
It is possible.
Because you could say that their fear could drive their desire for control.
Yeah, but then I would say, like I have some people could even think that I'm type 8 in some circumstances, but that's because I'm type 6. I'm type 6 SX, which can look like an 8 sometimes. So I would think it's more likely that an INFP would be type 6 counterphobic.
Would those be in SX circumstances, but you look like a type 8?
Yeah, that can be. Yeah, either of those, or if there, like I said, if there is this underdog kind of happening that I have to defend someone. If I have to defend someone who is weak, then I can be, or if there's injustice, I can be pretty much like an 8.
Ian McNay said a lot of people, when they had on Conscious TV, when I talked about Enneagram, at the start of every video they would say that the actual purpose of Enneagram is not to identify you with one motivation and say you are this. It is to realize that these are 8 tendencies within a person that they must come to terms with in order to release themselves from the cage of those tendencies to sort of see, so they become much more self-aware. So it's a growth tool.
Yeah, and I also always say that Enneagram is a very good emotional work tool. And like I said, if people have any traumas or anything, it can be helpful to recognize that, because usually people who have any kind of traumas have huge trouble recognizing their emotions. So that can be a very good tool to recognize your own feelings and values and motivations and stuff like that. But it's not to get stuck in them. So it's a different thing.
Right, I think we've covered typology. Have you got any interests or hobbies outside of typology that you've not mentioned?
I think I have to mention that one of my biggest interests for several years have been these color and style systems. And I want to mention them because they have overlap to these personality typologies. Because I'm not interested in fashion. I'm interested in style and color analysis. So
Sorry, what was that? What analysis?
Color and style analysis. Like this color, like.
Color.
Color, yeah, color. I'm sorry.
It sounded like core analysis.
Red and green and blue.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So there are those communities and groups are mostly female. So I call those my women groups. And the main goal for women there is to find their authentic style, and they want their own color palette with which they can build their own wardrobe and style. So it's about authenticity, and it relates to this personality typologies because it's also about authenticity. I think this is just a more external layer, and then typology is about internal stuff.
I'm smiling because authenticity is associated with a certain Jersey temperament.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I'm not saying which one, but yeah, you can guess.
Right. So anything else? Because we could then stop now and move on to.
Yeah, let's move on.
Strengths. Right. So here we go. We're going to stop now, folks.
Yeah.
Get the. Here we go.